Hey there, adventurers. I'm Norwolf, and welcome to my role-playing game realm. So today I want to do something a little bit different. I actually want to cover off one of the rules supplements for the Adventurer Conqueror King System. So I'm not diving into the core rulebook itself, but I do want to pop into just give a brief overview of the Lairs and Encounters book. Written by Alexander Macris, who's also the original game designer, along with Tavis Allison and Greg Tito. But I guess I do want to preface this with this is not a paid advertising or anything like that. It's just me being a particular fan of the book itself. And I was looking through my library the other day, looking for some inspiration to use in my Powers and Perils solo play, and came across this book that I'd printed off from a PDF a while back, and then did a thermal binding on it. So I do like kind of having the physical thing in my hand. I don't mind PDFs. I find them, PDFs as a reference can be quite handy too, but sometimes I just like the physical copy of the paper in hand and be able to flip back and forth sometimes. So anyways, let me do a bit of a read off the DriveThruRPG website on what they have to say about this book. So, the Lairs and Encounters is the ultimate supplement for fantasy role RPG sandbox campaigns. Designed for use with the Adventurer Conqueror King System, or ACKS for short, it is readily compatible with other fantasy role-playing games built on the same core rules. So, essentially any AD&D like system out there. And, I wouldn't say that it's only similar core rules, but you could essentially adapt a lot of this information to any, my humble opinion, any fantasy role-playing game. So, as I said, I'm planning to use this in my Powers and Perils, and it is by no means anywhere near the same sort of rules as Powers and Perils. So, but a lot of the write-ups and all the rest in here are extremely handy. So anyways, the Lairs and Encounters, or in Lairs and Encounters, you will find more than 165 ready-to-play monster lairs, one for every major monster in the Adventurer Conqueror King system. The lair listings are designed to be used as both as dynamic points of interest that can be discovered while wandering through the wilderness, and as obstacles to a would-be ruler's attempt to secure land for a domain. It has a cartographic compendium of 36 lair maps for the judge's use and 6 treasure maps to hand out to players. A catalog of 30 new monsters, including the Chaos Hulk, Child of Nazgûl, Dire Beastmen, Desert Ghouls, you name it, there's a number of them in there. A new system for sandbox play, including rules for populating 6-mile hexes with lairs based on the terrain and extent of settlements in the region, and rules for searching for lairs in the wilderness, factoring in terrain density, aerial reconnaissance, and splitting up the party to cover more ground, etc. Additional mechanics for monsters, including ability scores for monsters, proficiency for monsters, and young monsters. A complete system for taming and training monsters with details on the lifespan, roles, tricks, trained and untrained value, supply costs, training period, and trainability modifiers for every monster in the game. And last but not least, a complete system for creating your own unique monsters. So in the ACKS Player's Companion, they gave us mechanics for creating balanced new character classes and spells, and now they bring that same rigorous attention to balance and customization to monsters. So I guess before I start diving into the actual book itself, let's take a quick look at the index, and for that I'll actually pull up the PDF. So the table of contents. Of course, there's a brief introduction and how to use the book. We get into some of the lair rules on discovering lairs and searching for them, that sort of thing. We get into chapter 3 where they have all the different lair listings. You'll see here it's quite the plethora of different creatures, including men, various types of men, berserkers, whatnot that can be found. Chapter 4, we get into the actual monster, additional rules for monsters, everything from ability scores and proficiencies to training them, to what some of the different parts of the monsters can be used for and their values, and creating your own custom monsters. So the different rules for the different aspects of those monsters and balancing and things like that. And then Chapter 5 has the listing for the new monsters that they've added in. And then Appendix 1 and 2 are covering off the treasure maps and lair maps that are more detailed maps or larger maps of some of the ones included with the monsters themselves, or monster lairs themselves. So let's flip back to the main screen here and let's get into diving into the book a bit. Right, so as we get into the book, I won't delve or dwell too much on the introduction. It's the usual, how to use the book, what's inside the book, and then we get into the actual layers. Excuse the printing. I'm off by a page, so my page numbers are in the middle instead of on the outsides of the page layout. They get into the dynamic points of interest, how to kind of flesh out the hexes within your campaign. In the ACKS, they're talking to, in the ACKS rulebook is recommending, 45 major points of interest in a 40 by 30 set of 6 mile hexes. That leaves a whole lot of hexes that are unpopulated. So again, what's in the layers in this book can help you kind of flesh out some of those hexes, and as they encounter monsters, in their travels or in their searches, you roll for whether or not a monster is encountered in its lair, and you essentially can start, fleshing out those in-layer monsters with the details that are in here. So, if you have a giant ant encounter, they have a 10% chance of being found in lair. If you do, roll that 10% chance, you can mark the map location that the giant ant layer is located in, and this gives you all the information about, a bit of a description of the layer itself, how many creatures are found in it, and whether or not there's any treasure, that sort of thing. When we look at, if we get into the dragons, is probably a really good one. Let's go with the blue dragon here. So blue dragon is in layer 40%. Gives you a bit of a description, and in this case, an actual map of the lair. Not a highly detailed map, but definitely something that you can work from. Tells you the name of the dragon that's in there. In this case, it's a single old blue dragon. All the stats associated with that dragon, and all the treasure that can be found in that lair. So this little guy here has an egg of Iskara, a huge facet cut black sapphire worth 10,000 gold pieces. Other important treasures include an emerald studded platinum circlet for 6,000 gold pieces, a necklace for 4,000 gold pieces, various other things including a whole whack of coins, 1,000 gold pieces, 6,000 platinum pieces in Zaharan coins. Scattered amidst the coins is the remains of a sorcerer's library, some 36 rare arcane books, and so on, including magic treasure and whatnot. So, great source for layer information, and any D20 based D&D like rule system. It's probably easiest to adapt this to, but as I plan to do, I'm going to adapt some of this into my Powers and Perils campaign, and likely any other fantasy RPG that I run, to leverage some of these lair encounters. They've got the NPC men, so pirates, clerics, fighters, bandits, troglodytes, unicorns, vampires. Again, some maps to go with some of the layers. They give you a reference to the back of the book itself for a full-sized copy of the map. And then in chapter 4, we get into some more details about the monsters themselves. So adding ability scores to monsters. I guess the thing to note about the ability scores is, the couple of examples that they give in here is if you have a horse with an 18 intelligence, that's not saying that it's the equivalent intelligence to a human with 18, but it's relative to other horses. So, a horse with an intelligence of 18 is, exceptionally smart when compared to other horses, but, by no means is anywhere near that of a human and is not able to do like calculus or something like that. And similarly, with a giant that has a strength of 7 is, relative to other giants, he could be quite weak for a giant, but is still considerably stronger than any man out there. So just something to keep in mind as you're looking at that piece. They talk about giving monsters different proficiencies, using monsters as henchmen, or trying to recruit them as henchmen, what to pay them, that sort of thing. They get into training monsters, a bit of an overview of the training here, and then they get into who can actually train them, how much it would cost for those different types of trainers, the different types of tricks that they can be taught, the roles that they can be taught to play, so whether they're guards or mounts or war mounts, using magic in the training process, and then encounters with trained or tamed monsters. Let's see, what else? And then we start getting into some of the tables associated with these things. So here we have and they're broken apart by the different categories or types. So animals, beastmen, and humanoids, fantastic creatures, giants, oozes, vermin. When we look at the white ape, to talk about the size, their weights, their normal loads that they can carry, lifespans, the roles that they can play, their values if they're trained versus adults and children and whatnot, the training periods for the different creatures. And then we get into the different monster parts. Again, broken apart by antlers, horns, and tusks, feathers and plumage, and what their values are. So cockatrice feathers, you can find 10 feathers. Number of feathers per 1 stone of weight, the value of the feathers, etc. Pelts and meat. Armored hides. Talking about, let's see, Venerable Dragon. Hide is 95 stone, I'm assuming, and worth 5,500 gold pieces. And then we get into harvesting special components from the different monsters. So whether they're used for spells or spell effects. When we look at something like I don't know what's a good one here. White ape. The spell component is their skull, what its weight is, encumbrance is, what that value is of that skull, and what it can be used for its associated effects. So mirror image and speak with animals. And again, they use kind of some of the spell laws or magic laws in here. So things like the law of similarity, law of polarity, and law of contagion. And that's another good one here. So hill giant, pituitary gland used for magic missile. So, as I said, it's a lot of this can be easily adapted to, your own spell components in whatever campaign or type of fantasy role-playing game that you're running. I realize a lot of games nowadays seem to want to simplify things. My own preference is a little bit more detail in what's going on, a little bit more meat to the rules, so to speak. So, things like this, I find, particularly interesting and particularly helpful for the types of games that I like to run or campaigns I like to run. Yeah, so that is kind of that section. Again, a lot of interesting art in here. Creating monsters and how to flesh them out in more detail and probably keep them balanced in the process. Everything from monster body forms, hit dice, weights and categories, ACs, attacks, their different abilities, special abilities, that sort of stuff. So let's see, we've got energy drain. Victim of the monster's primary attack loses one or more levels of experience. If the monster has 6 hit dice or less, or drains 1 level of experience. If the monster has 1 hit dice or less, it drains 1 level of experience. If it has 7 hit dice or more, it drains 2 levels of experience. And monster experience points. Monster organization. So the body form sample of a type of monster, so Draconin, or like dragons, Scent and Lair, Wandering Monster, Flight, Lair. Interesting. Yeah, so obviously I haven't used a whole lot of this, so some of this is a bit new to me. But again, probably relatively easy adaptable to any D&D-like system. And they even have a sample monster creation here. All right. Somehow that person looks like they're going to be in a bunch of trouble. And the final chapter here is on the monster listing. So we have all some new monsters that have been added to the ACKS game itself. And as we would expect with any sort of a monster write-up, it's the percent and lair. A little bit different here for ACKS is the dungeon encounter versus the wilderness encounter. And their alignments, movement rates, armor classes, hit dice, their attacks and the type of attack, the damage, etc. And experience points. And that looks like some interesting monsters in here. Pretty sure I've seen Grimlocks and Hags in other games. Hipri. Looks like a bug of some sort. Krakens, Marids, Mummy Lord, Rakshasas, Sphinxes, Yali, a type of cat. These awe-inspiring creatures commonly serve as sentinels and guard beasts, capable of defending temples of lawful gods and from wicked interlopers. And then last but not least, in the back of the book, in Appendix 1, we've got the treasure maps. And in Appendix 2, we have larger versions of some of the maps that were in the creature write-ups. So the White Ape Lair. We have the White Dragon Lair, Turtle Dragon Lair, Gorgon Lair, Egg Lair, Looks like a decent house, but I don't think you'd want to know what's on those tables. So that is the Lairs and Encounters book, which is part of the Adventurer Conqueror King System. And hopefully you found that somewhat interesting. I highly recommend the Lairs and Encounters book, even if you're not using the ACKS system, or if you're not using ACKS. I actually like the Adventurer Conqueror King system itself as well. If you're looking for a D&D-like system that also focuses on domain building and kind of that, building strongholds and defending them, and potentially even getting into armies and some army combat, it has some rules for that. But yeah, that is it for today. Thanks for joining me, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.